All right, so get this, that iconic opening to the Da Vinci Code and all the symbols and secrets. Turns out the Fibonacci sequence might be lurking right there beneath the surface. We're talking about those numbers where you add the last two to get the next one, like 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. But today we're going way beyond just, basic definitions. Buckle up, because we're diving deep into the wild connection between Fibonacci and the golden ratio.
What's fascinating is that Fibonacci deals with simple whole numbers, integers, while the golden ratio, often called phi, is this irrational number, a decimal that just goes on forever. You wouldn't think they'd have anything to do with each other, right?
Right, it's like finding a hidden message in a totally different language. So how do these two seemingly unrelated concepts end up kind of intertwined like that?
It's all about this mind-bending concept of self-similarity. Imagine a rectangle that you can divide into a square and a smaller rectangle. But here's the catch. That smaller rectangle has the exact same proportions as the original one. That perfect balance is phi, the golden ratio.
Okay, so I vaguely remember those golden rectangles from art class. But where does Fibonacci fit into all of this? Isn't that sequence more about spirals and seashells?
Ah, yes, the famous Fibonacci spiral. Visually, it's stunning, and it does approximate some natural forms, but it's important to remember that nature is way more complex than just a single mathematical sequence. The real connection between Fibonacci and phi happens at a much deeper level through a formula for calculating any Fibonacci number.
Hold on, a formula, so it's not just adding numbers together forever.
Right. It gets into some advanced math, but the incredible part is that this formula relies on fire, that irrational number we were talking about. It's like the universe is using something infinitely complex to create these simple whole numbers.
Okay, now my brain is starting to hurt a little, but in a good way. Can you give me an example of how this works without, turning this into like a math lecture?
Yeah. Let's say you want to find the 10th Fibonacci number. Instead of adding up all the previous numbers, this formula uses powers of phi and its inverse, along with some other constants. It's like a mathematical shortcut that just skips all the steps and leaps right to the answer.
So it's more efficient, but still uses this irrational number. I'm guessing this is where things get really interesting.
What's mind-blowing is that all the irrational parts of the formula magically cancel out, leaving you with a perfect whole Fibonacci number. It's a testament to the inherent order and elegance that's hidden within these seemingly complex mathematical relationships.
Whoa, that is pretty mind-blowing. So this formula isn't just a neat trick. It reveals a deeper connection between whole numbers and irrational numbers.
Precisely. And this connection helps explain why the ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers gets closer and closer to phi as you go further down the sequence. They're intimately linked, both mathematically and visually.
Wait, are you saying that the Fibonacci spiral and the golden ratio spiral are somehow connected visually too?
Think of it this way. As the ratio between Fibonacci numbers approaches figment, the Fibonacci spiral, which uses those numbers to determine its shape, gets closer and closer to the golden spiral, which is constructed using golden rectangles. They're like two sides of the same coin, both expressing this underlying mathematical harmony.
So if I'm understanding this right, both the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are more than just cool mathematical concepts. They're like keys to unlocking hidden patterns and beauty in the world around us.
It's almost like a secret code that's embedded in nature and art and even music. The Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are two sides of the same coin, both expressions of this underlying mathematical harmony.
Okay, you've officially piqued my curiosity. I'm ready to dive deeper into this secret code and see where it takes us.
Let's start with the Fibonacci sequence itself. Its journey actually begins long before Dan Brown's thriller, taking us back to ancient civilizations and the unexpected world of rabbit populations. You might be surprised to learn that the Fibonacci sequence, which feels so modern and even a bit mysterious, actually has roots in a very practical problem about rabbit breeding.
Wait, rabbits? Seriously, that's where this elegant mathematical sequence comes from.
It might sound odd, but it highlights how mathematical concepts can emerge from the most unexpected places. Leonardo of Pisa, better known as Fibonacci, was an Italian mathematician who in his book Liber Abaci introduced the sequence to the Western world through a thought experiment about, yes, rabbit populations.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do rabbits lead us to the Fibonacci sequence?
Fibonacci posed this problem. If you start with one pair of rabbits, and if they reproduce in a specific way, each pair producing another pair every month after they mature, how many pairs will you have after a certain number of months? As you track the rabbit population growth, you'll find it follows the Fibonacci sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on.
So the rabbit problem was like a fun way to illustrate how the sequence works. But did Fibonacci connect this to the golden ratio, or was that discovered later?
While Fibonacci popularized the sequence, the golden ratio has a much longer history, going back to the ancient Greeks. They were obsessed with achieving perfect proportion and harmony in their art and architecture. They believed that the golden ratio represented this ideal beauty, and you can see it reflected in their sculptures, temples, and even musical instruments.
So this idea of perfect proportion represented by phi has been around for centuries.
Absolutely. And it's not just a Western concept. Cultures around the world seem to have an innate appreciation for this ratio, suggesting it might be connected to how our brains process visual information, making us naturally drawn to these harmonious proportions. It's like a universal aesthetic language transcending cultural boundaries.
That's fascinating. But how did we go from appreciating the golden ratio's aesthetic appeal to understanding its complex mathematical properties and connecting it to the Fibonacci sequence?
That's where things get really exciting. Over centuries, mathematicians continued to explore the golden ratio, uncovering its properties and links to other mathematical concepts. It was through these explorations that the hidden connection to the Fibonacci sequence was finally revealed.
So it wasn't some sudden eureka moment, but a gradual unveiling of this intricate relationship.
Exactly. And what's remarkable is that even today, there's still so much we don't know about the golden ratio and its implications. It's a concept that continues to intrigue and challenge mathematicians and scientists alike.
Okay, I get that Fibonacci and the golden ratio are connected, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on how they actually come together. What's the missing piece of this puzzle?
The key lies in that formula we mentioned earlier, the one that allows us to calculate any Fibonacci number. To understand it, we need to remember that phi is irrational, meaning its decimal representation goes on forever without repeating. But here's the kicker. Phi is also the solution to a very specific equation. X Fourier x plus 1.
Hold on, I'm seeing a glimmer of connection here. Doesn't the Fibonacci sequence also have something to do with adding the previous two numbers?
You're catching on. It's no coincidence. The equation that defines phi is intimately linked to the recursive nature of the Fibonacci sequence. It's through this equation that we can derive that formula for calculating any Fibonacci number.
Okay, I'm following you so far. But how can a formula involving an irrational number, something infinitely long and non-repeating, result in a sequence of whole numbers?
That's the truly mind-blowing part. The formula uses powers of phi and its inverse. And through a bit of mathematical wizardry, all those irrational elements cancel out, leaving us with those neat and tidy Fibonacci numbers. It's like alchemy transforming something seemingly chaotic and infinite into pure numerical order.
Wow, that's incredible. I never realized the Fibonacci sequence had such a complex mathematical underpinning. And I remember you mentioned something about the ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers getting closer and closer to phi as the sequence goes on. Is that just a coincidence, or is there more to it?
That's not a coincidence at all. It's a direct result of the mathematical relationship between Fibonacci and phi. That same formula used to calculate Fibonacci numbers also proves this relationship. As you go further down the sequence, the influence of phi becomes more and more dominant, driving this convergence towards the golden ratio.
So it's not just a cool observation, it's woven into the very fabric of the formula itself. But what are the visual implications of this convergence?
Remember the Fibonacci spiral and the golden spiral. This relationship explains why they're so visually similar. As the ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers gets closer to Fichet, the Fibonacci spiral, constructed using squares with sides based on the sequence, starts to resemble the golden spiral, which is built on those golden rectangles we discussed earlier. They're both expressions of this fundamental mathematical harmony.
So those two spirals, while not identical, are visually similar because of the underlying mathematical link between the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio.
Precisely. They both reflect this deep-seated mathematical harmony that permeates so many aspects of our world. And speaking of our world, let's circle back to those pop culture references we mentioned earlier.
Right. The Da Vinci Code used the Fibonacci sequence to solve a mystery, but it also hinted at some mystical significance behind these concepts. Is there any truth to that, or is it purely for dramatic effect?
While the mystical interpretation is more fiction than fact, the fascination with the golden ratio throughout history does lend itself to this kind of storytelling. The idea that this mathematical ratio holds some secret to beauty or universal harmony has been around for centuries, so it's natural that this fascination would find its way into popular culture.
So it's more about the cultural mythology that's built up around the golden ratio than any inherent mystical properties.
Exactly. The golden ratio has captured the imagination of artists, architects, and philosophers for centuries. It's been viewed as a symbol of perfection, balance, and even divine proportion. It's not surprising that it continues to inspire such intrigue and fascination.
I can see how people would easily ascribe mystical significance to something as mathematically elegant as the golden ratio, especially when you consider its presence in nature.
And the Fibonacci sequence, with its connection to phi and its appearance in the arrangement of flower petals, the branching of trees, and the spiral of a nautilus shell, adds another layer to this intrigue. It's easy to see why people would view it as evidence of some kind of underlying cosmic order.
It's like the universe is communicating with us through these mathematical patterns.
In a way, yes. The Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio offer a glimpse into the beauty and complexity of the natural world, reminding us that there are underlying principles governing our universe. And mathematics provides powerful tools to understand those principles.
But these principles aren't confined to nature, are they? You mentioned earlier that composers have incorporated the Fibonacci sequence into their music. How does that work?
Music is all about patterns and proportions, and the Fibonacci sequence provides a natural framework for creating those patterns. Composers have used the sequence to determine the number of notes in a phrase, the duration of those notes, and even the structure of entire movements within a piece.
So it's like a hidden mathematical scaffolding that gives the music a sense of balance and flow.
Precisely. And because the Fibonacci sequence is so closely tied to the golden ratio, it's thought that music composed using these principles might be inherently pleasing to the ear because it reflects the same harmonious proportions found in nature.
That's incredible. Math and music, who knew they were such close collaborators? But we can't forget about those Fibonacci retracement levels used in financial markets. How can something as seemingly unpredictable as the stock market be influenced by mathematical patterns?
While it might seem counterintuitive, the idea behind Fibonacci retracement is that market movements, even when appearing random, often follow predictable patterns of correction and continuation. These patterns are based on ratios found within the Fibonacci sequence, such as 38.2%, 50%, and 61.8%.
So traders are essentially using the Fibonacci sequence as a roadmap to understand these patterns and potentially predict where the market is headed.
Exactly. It's not foolproof, of course. The stock market is influenced by countless factors, many unpredictable. But Fibonacci retracement provides one tool among many that traders use to try and make sense of the chaos.
Wow, we've gone from rabbits and ancient Greek temples to the intricacies of musical composition and the unpredictable world of the stock market. It seems like everywhere we look, there are hints of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There are countless other examples of these concepts appearing in the most unexpected places, from the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower to the shape of galaxies.
So what's the big takeaway? Is the prevalence of these mathematical concepts just a coincidence, or is there a deeper reason for their ubiquity?
That's the million-dollar question. Some believe it's simply a result of efficient packing and growth patterns in nature. Others see it as evidence of a deeper mathematical harmony underlying the universe itself.
So the mystery remains.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this so fascinating. The Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio offer a glimpse into the beauty and complexity of the natural world and continue to inspire wonder and curiosity in those who seek to understand them.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's changed the way I look at the world, seeing these patterns everywhere.
And that's precisely what we hope to achieve. To inspire a sense of wonder and curiosity about the world and show that mathematics is not just about numbers and formulas, but about understanding the patterns that connect us all.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the ancient origins of these concepts to their surprising appearances in modern life. Ready to wrap things up and leave our listener with some final thoughts to ponder.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've journeyed from ancient Greece to modern-day stock markets, all thanks to these seemingly simple concepts: the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio.
It's amazing how these ideas pop up in the most unexpected places, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who would have thought rabbit breeding and the stock market would have anything in common?
Right. But besides, feeling like I just unlocked a secret level of understanding the universe, what's the practical takeaway for our listener? What can they do with this newfound knowledge besides, winning trivia night?
That's a great question. I think one of the biggest takeaways is simply a heightened awareness. Once you understand these concepts, you start noticing them everywhere. Suddenly you're seeing the Fibonacci spiral in a sunflower or recognizing the golden ratio in a piece of art. It's like the world becomes a bit more magical and interconnected.
It's like those hidden picture puzzles where once you see the image, you can't unsee it. But this time the image is math.
Exactly. And this awareness can deepen your appreciation for the beauty and complexity of nature art and even music. It's about recognizing that there are underlying patterns and structures at play, even in things that seem random or chaotic.
So it's not just about memorizing numbers, it's about understanding the principles behind them and how they shape our world.
Precisely. It's about fostering a sense of curiosity and wonder about the world around us. The Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are just two examples of how seemingly simple mathematical concepts can lead to profound insights and connections.
I think that's a great point. It's a reminder that there's always more to learn and that the journey of discovery can be full of surprises. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, except instead of tears, you get aha moments.
I like that analogy. And speaking of aha moments, I think the most important takeaway from this deep dive is the realization that math isn't just a dry, abstract subject. It's a language, a way of understanding and describing the world around us.
So it's not just about equations and formulas, it's about patterns and connections that link seemingly disparate things.
Exactly. The Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio demonstrate that math can be beautiful, elegant, and even a bit mysterious. They highlight the interconnectedness of everything from the smallest atom to the vast expanse of the universe.
This deep dive has truly been mind-expanding. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on the world.
And that's what we hoped for. We wanted to inspire you to see the world through a slightly different lens, one that reveals the hidden mathematical wonders that surround us every day.
Well said. And for our listener, we leave you with this final thought. Keep your eyes peeled for the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. You might be surprised where you find them. They could be in the spiral of a pine cone, the arrangement of leaves on a stem, or even the design of your favorite building.
Happy exploring. And remember, the world is full of mathematical marvels just waiting to be discovered.
Until next time, keep diving deep.